Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor of Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Brian Murphy and Taylor Ragland. It's only Wednesday, guys, but it feels like it's been a pretty busy week so far with all the happenings in the boys and girls basketball playoffs. Girls have just wrapped up the third round. Boys wrapped up the first round. We're going to touch on the boys in a bit, but first, we got to touch on some of the action, especially last night on the girls' end of the hard court, because we had some absolute barn burners. In the regional quarterfinals, including a game, Taylor, that you can get to right now, man. A game that literally went right down to the wire. We wouldn't expect anything less between Allen and Sachse, given how competitive the two teams played each other in non-district. And the third meeting was indeed a doozy.
Yeah, we, prior to the game, we were talking about it, and we kind of envisioned it going one of two ways. Either Sachse would kind of have its redemption story and its revenge and pull away and win, maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 points and move on, or, Allen wins a close one and kind of pulls the same thing they've done several times this season, and it ended up being the latter. It was a great game. Start to finish, very evenly matched, two really good basketball teams. I think Allen was ranked number 16 and Sachse number 5 officially, but there weren't 11 spots between those two teams last night. Star power on both sides, and obviously it came right down to the wire. Sachse goes up. It was crazy because I was sitting on the Sachse sideline officially, covering the game and was surrounded by Sachse fans. And Avery Krause, lays one in with, I believe, 10 or 11 seconds left, and Sachse's up one. And it looks like that's it. It looks like, that's going to be your quote-unquote buzzer beater. Allen is going to get one more possession, but, more often than not, coming down the court in transition and having to rush, things don't usually work out. And it even appeared that way at first. Tyler Jackson gets the ball, goes in, and misses her shot, falls down, and then lo and behold, it falls directly to senior Cydni Adams, and she puts it up and in. Buzzer goes off. Sachse, you can hear, it's funny in the highlight that I took, you can hear the elation when Jackson's shot misses, and then just dead silence on my side, and Allen, you can see going crazy in the background as they win, 50-49, but not much to say except a great basketball game. It's a shame that those two teams had to meet in the round that they did, because that's a great game. Two really good teams that probably both deserve to move on, I guess, if you want to put it that way. For Sachse, Adele Tack was outrageous. Jayla Brooks had 9. They were Avery Krause, I believe, also had 9. Kayla Demas had 9. They were really good, pretty much up and down. And they tried to stop Nia Green, which I guess is the game plan for a lot of people when you play Allen, just because you know what Nia Green brings. If she is on shooting the basketball, it's really hard to stop. She still had 13, I think, but they did slow her down. But then Tyler Jackson really stepped up, had 19, was shooting the ball really, really well, and helped lift Allen. And it was wild. When Adams's shot went in, it was just pretty much disbelief from everybody, including the Allen supporters. It was just pandemonium. So it was a good one. Like I said, it was a shame that one of those teams had to go home. Two really, really good girls basketball programs. Allen moving on to their first ever regional tournament. But for Sachse, it's not all doom and gloom either. They are still firmly in the middle of their window, I guess, if you want to call it. They bring back a lot of really talented players, a lot of people that played really important minutes this year. So, tears for Sachse for now, but definitely some promise on the horizon for them as well.
When I saw the tweet and the highlight of that last basket by Cydni Adams, I wasn't surprised. Cydni Adams, she's 5'4", at least listed in the program. She is. She is almost at all times the smallest player on the floor, and yet she has this intuition for being in the right place at the right time. I saw her do the same thing earlier in the year in district play against Plano East, where Allen had to make a late comeback to force overtime, and Cydni Adams had her fingerprints all over that game with just these clutch rebounds. And I just don't know what that all boils down to, and how just she's able to be in the right place at the right time, because these are really clutch rebounds, like rebounds that when the shot goes up, everybody is trying to get the ball. This
her only bucket of the night.
This isn't like a shot that goes up this isn't a shot that goes up in the second quarter where you might get 3 or 4 players that try to make an effort at it.
This is it.
I mean, it's the biggest rebound in the game, and she's the one that comes down with it. I was not surprised at all to see her come through with
her only score. Because it was almost unbelievable when I was going back and adding up all the points and doing all the the box score and everything. I was like, holy crap, that was it. That's all. That was her only bucket, but she was right there.
Buzzer beaters are nothing new for Allen, though. Coming off a missed shot, right place, right time rebound. I mean, Alyssa Tarpley did it to Prosper a couple weeks ago in the second to last district game of the season to beat them literally at the buzzer. The same exact situation that they gave Sachse last night.
This is now 10 straight wins for Allen. Allen is playing as hot as any team in the state right now. And
finding a way.
They will, yes. I mean, the game against Tyler Lee and this game you saw against Sachse could not have been more different in terms of just production from Allen. I mean, that Tyler Lee game was at times a bit of a rough watch, but yes, just that's been the key for them, is just finding a way, come by any means necessary. They've really shown a knack at coming through in the clutch during this win streak of theirs, and now, like I said, best playoff run ever. No matter what happens rest of the way, first time they've ever been 4 rounds deep. This team is already making history, so we'll see what happens Friday out at Ellis Davis Fieldhouse when they take on number 2 ranked Pflugerville Hendrickson, an absolute juggernaut of a program that has only lost 1 game all season. Should be a fun one. The first half of that doubleheader, though, in the regional semifinals will feature Prosper, which is the game that I was at last night. Another great game. I wouldn't have expected anything less between Prosper and Plano Senior. I was fortunate enough to cover the first 2 times these 2 teams played each other during district play. They split those 2 meetings. Both games very, very different from a tactical standpoint. So just to put the do or die backdrop of a playoff game, behind these 2, what would happen? And I mean, fittingly enough, this was a tie game heading into the final minute. Wouldn't have expected anything less. You had both teams. Neither team could really make a whole lot from the field. I mean, this was lots of free throws, lots of trips to the line there late, and neither team had a banner close. Shooting from the charity stripe, but. I mean, obviously, much like the Cydni Adams basket, the highlight that will, live on in infamy from this game is, you mentioned, kind of an unlikely hero in Cydni Adams. Freshman Hadley Morrell coming through in the clutch with hands down the biggest shot, of her young varsity career. Biggest shot, one of the biggest shots, I'm guessing, in Prosper basketball history, is as the Lady Eagles get a 3-pointer inside the final minute from Hadley Morrell to finally get some separation from Plano. And the defense is able to force a turnover on the other end. Madison Willis-Rosa does a great job intercepting an inbounds pass. And Maddie Cleary knocks down a free throw on the other end for a 4-point lead. And Prosper, 55-51. They win the rubber match in just a terrific game.
I mean, when you look at this team, obviously Jordan Oliver stands out. Number 1 ranked women's player in Texas. But these role players on this team, they're such a well-oiled machine. It's not just Jordan Oliver. Like you mentioned, Maddie Cleary is one of the best shooters on the girls level I've seen. I know you've tweeted about her a lot. She lights it up. She can knock down 3 or 4
she'll get hot too.
Threes in a second. In the same quarter. Girls like Chandler Browning have really stepped up the last few weeks for sure. I know she hit a big shot late last night in the fourth quarter, and then you have Morrell. A freshman coming in there, and when I saw her play against Allen, she had the daunting task of taking on Nia Green and really stifling her. She forced a turnover. I remember at one point of the game at midcourt, she pestered her so much that she forced a turnover on Nia Green, an All-American, a senior, over 6 foot tall, and here's this freshman, Hadley Morrell, just coming in here, doing the dirty work. Madison Willis-Rosa, she does the dirty work too. And then you have the big player down low, Scout Huffman. They just all know their role. They all know what they can do, what they're supposed to do on the court to complement a player of Jordan Oliver's caliber.
I think that's the key. I think you have a Jordan Oliver, but then everybody else stays in their lane. They don't try to do too much. They don't try to be anything that they're not asked to be. It's like, this is what I do. I'm Matty Quick. I'm going to go shoot threes. And it's working.
And it always helps, though, when Jordan Oliver is able to be the best player on the floor, as she is more times than not, because she really did kind of shift momentum back in Prosper's favor there in the second half. She scored 13 points in the third quarter alone. Just a lot of them coming in. Plano went zone in the first half, went to man in the second half, but Plano just had a really tough time taking care of the ball in this game. They committed, I got to read here in my notes, 15, 16, 17 turnovers,
Nice.
and a lot of them leading to runouts, and Oliver being able to do her thing in transition, and she is just so fast.
When she is in transition, she is unstoppable. That's where she gets a big bulk of her points in a hurry.
And at the same time, we know that she can score a ton. She had 25 last night. You had 13 rebounds, 4 steals. It was that I only had her down for 3 assists. It was that last assist, though, that it was obviously the play of the game. And I think just that, that's what kind of makes her, that kind of what separates her and puts her a notch above, just any typical girls basketball player. You think of a player with that kind of mentality, a 5-star prospect, McDonald's All-American, and I can see that kind of just that mentality breeding, okay, well, this team is going to live and die with what I do. And at the same time, everyone, Plano anticipated that when games inside the final minute, Jordan Oliver's got the ball coming up across half court, that she was going to make a move, and Plano sold out its defense to try to shut her down. Oliver's able to get into the lane. There's 3 Plano defenders there waiting to contest her shot. Now, at the time, you're thinking, well, okay, on the one hand, you have Jordan Oliver's resume, her pedigree, and just her shot-making ability. Well, okay, Jordan Oliver's going to take that shot still. She's the anchor for that team. That team, goes as she goes. But at the same time, though, she turned down the hero ball shot and made the right basketball play.
Her basketball IQ is that high, and she has enough trust in her players, the role players on this team. These girls on this team, although they're not on her caliber, they're no slouch. This is a team very well deserving of being where they're at right now, not just because of Jordan Oliver.
Oh yeah,
very, very impressive stuff by Prosper to pull it out against Plano on Tuesday. Over in 5A, Brian, you called your shot with a potential Frisco regional final. That dream is indeed still intact. Lone Star and Liberty are still fighting on into the regional semifinals. One more win between the two, and you'll get that third meeting.
Well, last night there was some Frisco on Frisco crime, I guess you could say. Liberty still had to go through Centennial, a team they'd already beaten twice this year. Centennial, who I think is really the third best team in this region. Obviously, I think Liberty and Lone Star are the 2 top dogs in this region. And then I think the third best team is in the very same district. In Centennial, they just didn't have enough to get over that hump to beat Liberty. Third time wasn't a charm for the Lady Titans, but they gave them all they could handle. They took the lead late with about 2.5 minutes in this game. They took a 1-possession lead over Liberty, and then Liberty got back-to-back threes from Randy Thompson. We all know about Randy Thompson. She had 22 last night, some big-time shots in the second half, and then they kind of separated themselves just enough. And I actually spoke to head coach Ross Reedy earlier today, and the final score was a 10-point game, but he said it was much closer than 10-point indicated. So Centennial, they're close. They're closing the gap there, but they're just not quite on the level of Liberty and Lone Star. Lone Star, man, they blew out Wiley East last night.
Quality win.
A state-ranked Wiley East team. They dismantled them by 20 points on a night that Adriana Quezada only had 10 points. Wow. And she's right there, like I've mentioned this many times, front runner alongside Randy Thompson for that district MVP. But when you have Mia Deck, who is that scrappy defensive player, streaky, she's that 3-and-D type player. She had 24 points last night. And when you have players like that dropping 24 points, they're going to be tough to beat, especially when they're shooting threes, because their bread and butter. I saw it against Lovejoy in the first round. Obviously, they like to bang down low. They have the players. They have Quezada, Kayla Richardson, Leah Harris. They have players that can get rebounds and get scrappy. But when you have the Deck sisters and other players hitting threes, good luck beating Lone Star. That's a tough out.
They get Red Oak now in the regional semifinal. Red Oak team that's playing pretty well. They've got all 3 of their playoff wins have been by at least 13 points, including one in the regional quarterfinals against another school in our markets, Poteet at Mesquite. Despite Poteet getting big nights from its tried and true tandem of Tajane Perry and Amaya Briggs, just not enough firepower to keep up with a red hot Red Oak team. So that is, we'll get that in one half of the Region 2 semifinals. Who does Liberty play?
North Forney.
Okay.
And Centennial beat North Forney earlier this year, so kind of indicative of maybe how easy or may not easy it may be for Liberty, since Liberty's beaten Centennial 3 times. But just a common opponent there. It's something interesting to look at.
We also had the Colony, which punched its ticket to the regional tournament on Monday. They took down Mansfield Legacy in a 70-65, a nice little shootout for the Lady Cougars. Second time in 3 years that the Colony is in the regional tournament. They got sound like you had a nice little one-on-one between Jewel Spear and Harmony Turner. Both, Turner finishes with 29 points. Jewel Spear goes for 30. And look at the Colony now, bound for the fourth round of the postseason. They got to travel all the way out to Snyder, though. They got a bit of a long drive ahead of them as they prepare for a matchup against number 2 ranked Amarillo. Always a force to be reckoned with on the basketball
Harmony
court.
Turner. I saw her play in the regional tournament. You said Mansfield Legacy.
Yeah.
I saw her play. I think it was either against Liberty or Lone Star. I think it was against Liberty 2 years ago, and she was an underclassman. And I could tell she was going to be a player. And now I guess so. She's right there with Jewel Spear.
Yep.
Going toe for toe with that. That name sounded familiar. I was like, I know that name from somewhere.
Right, and let's see. That is a look at the happenings, at least within our neck of the woods, for the third round of the girls' basketball playoffs. Obviously, still plenty of notable takeaways for the first round on the boys' side, and we'll get to that in a bit. But first, got to shine that student-athlete spotlight. And for that, hey, we mentioned Cydni Adams hit that big game winner against Allen. Well, that's where I was at this morning to talk with Cydni about her big bucket, Allen's huge, historic win from a program standpoint, and just their big midseason turnaround. And we will see what Cydni had to say after a word from the sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. We are out at Allen High School talking with Cydni Adams, backup guard for the Lady Eagles basketball team. Allen fresh off a last-second victory last night over Sachse in the regional quarterfinals, thanks in no small part to Cydni, who hits the game winner, a putback, as time expires to send the Lady Eagles to the regional tournament for the first time ever. Cydni, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. Sure. Let's just start with that. First off, first ever game-winning shot for you?
Yes, it actually is. Yes, it is this season. Yes, sir.
Just what have the emotions of the last 12 hours been like for you, and just kind of put this moment into perspective. Certainly, I would guess the biggest shot of your high school basketball career.
Oh my gosh! Since it's my senior year, hitting that shot really means a lot. We're making history, and what was going through my mind was like, I got to make this shot for my team, and just to give us another chance to move on and keep fighting to maybe be state champs. Great feeling.
Walk me through just those last 10 seconds from your vantage point, because this was a putback, so you had to get the rebound. There was one of your teammates took that initial shot, but when Sachse takes the lead on you and your season essentially comes down to 10 seconds, just what's your mentality like as you're heading down to the other end of the floor? I
personally thought that Tyler Jackson was gonna make it, but then when it came my way, I was like, it's my chance. And I just grabbed it and put it in.
When you get that rebound, could you tell how much time was left? Just what's kind of rushing through your mind is like, okay,
I had to get this shot up. I had to. And I saw as soon as I threw it, one of the bigs almost blocked it, but I couldn't think of any of that. I just had to put it in.
It's a moment that, you dream about moments like this when you're a kid. What was the rush like after you made that shot?
It was crazy to see my teammates and the fans just all cheering for me. And then everybody just started running at me, and I couldn't do nothing but just fall and hit the ground.
I saw the quote, you described it as the senior dream. Does that, with this being, your senior year and your last go-around with the program, does that make a moment like last night all the more memorable for you? Or?
Yes, sir. It makes it 10 times better.
Now, I saw you do something similar early on in district against Plano East, just grabbing clutch rebounds and really helping, come through late. Given your size, just how do you put yourself in position to come through like that, on the boards in those moments?
Because no one thinks that I'm gonna get a rebound, and that's my secret. I go get it because everybody's gonna be watching, and I just fly through and just catch it.
And now with last night's win, this is officially the deepest ever playoff run in Allen girls basketball history. Now, I know the team's not content. Y'all have visions on going a bit further, but nevertheless, and just to be part of that history, just what does that mean to you?
It means everything. Just to leave my mark before I leave, it just means the world.
Now this is 10 straight wins. I mean, this team's playing as hot as any team in the state right now. So just thinking back to that last loss versus Prosper, just what has changed since then, and just what do you attribute to the hot streak that this team has been on?
I think our mentality has changed. I think as a team we're getting closer, and I think we're mentally getting prepared to make it to state and win.
Just talk about your specific role on this team. I know early on in the year you started here and there. Now you're coming off the bench, backing up the guards. Just talk about when you're on the floor, just what your responsibilities are in this rotation.
I'm supposed to be the spark, and I love that job. I love to just hustle and just try to be everywhere, be the little pest that everybody hates.
Yeah, certainly a spark you provided there last night. Now obviously a big one coming up on Friday against Hendrickson, number 2 ranked team in the state. Just talk a bit about just what is it going to take to keep this run going for y'all?
Playing together and just continuing to play like this is our last game, because it really is. And if we don't do that and mentally prepare, who knows? We have to fight all the way until 0-0 on the clock.
And yeah, hey, Cydni, that is all I had for you. So yes, if you got something to do on Friday, I mean, swing by the Ellis Davis Fieldhouse, 8 o'clock, Allen versus Hendrickson. Should be a great game. Cydni, best of luck to y'all later this week. Thank you for taking the time to chat.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Cydni Adams for taking the time to chat for our Student Athlete Spotlight. And with that, let's shift gears and let's talk by district boys basketball. So the first round is in the books. Still got plenty of teams that are still afloat. Let's start with 9-6A versus 10-6A. I thought coming into this that relative to how the what happened in football and volleyball and girls basketball, maybe there was a chance that the boys basketball playoff matchups might be a little bit more competitive. And really got only one.
Yeah.
And you saw that game, Taylor. Yeah. It was the second half of the doubleheader last night against Lakeview Centennial. Not at Coldwell Center, Plano West against Lakeview Centennial, I meant to say. Plano West able to, their return to the playoffs is not all for naught. They're able to punch their ticket to the second round, outlasting the Patriots for a 45-39 victory. What was your big takeaway from this game?
It seemed like it's hard to describe. It's almost just like that perfect first round postseason game. By that I mean not that it was a perfectly played game. I mean kind of the opposite. It was two teams that, it's in the first round a lot of times there's more turnovers than normal. There's some nerves, there's some jitters, there's teams kind of playing outside their identity a little bit and not executing the way that they normally would. And I think you kind of had that on both sides. I think that Plano West was up, I believe, a dozen at halftime, and ended up, Lakeview ended up getting it to within 3 points, I think, late in the fourth. So it was sloppy. It was low scoring, which is in contrast to kind of what we expected. Lakeview Centennial is a team that likes to get out and run sometimes. Plano West has no problem with that. If that's something that the game evolves into, but. It was a little choppy last night, and Lakeview really got back in with a really good press that in the third quarter especially, I believe they had a 10-0 run at one point that included 2 or 3 steals, a lot of buckets in transition, and West was kind of bending under the press a little bit when they hadn't in the first half, but at the end of the day, it was sloppy, it was ugly, but it was a win for Plano West. They hung on some big threes late from Ryan Zambu, who I think had a game high 14. David Miner had 10. He had some big buckets late in the third, and then one right at the very end to finish the game off with next to no time on the clock. But it honestly kind of devolved into. Lakeview didn't have any fouls to give late. Plano West kept getting the ball back, and there wasn't a lot they could do about it. And that kind of helped. It might have been a little different had they had some fouls to give, and because Plano West wasn't, shooting super well from the line. But, in the end, it was, as head coach Anthony Morgan said, it was a first-round playoff game. That's how a lot of playoff games go. They're close. You got to find a way to win at the end. And he even says, like, in my, 3+ decades, this one's obviously or often the toughest because it's just the jitters and the nerves and overcoming everything, and you're not playing the way you should because of all those things. So, I don't know what happens from here. West draws Rockwall on Friday. Pretty good Rockwall team. They beat by, I believe, 3 points earlier this season. So I don't know how much you can read into a 3-point result. Seems like another good game probably awaits us, but they're through a year after missing the playoffs completely through the area round, and we'll see where they can go from here.
It was the only game between these two districts that was contested by less than 20 points. Elsewhere, you had Allen took care of Wiley 71-50. Jesuit beat up on Sachse 71-39, and South Garland took care of Prosper 80-55.
In Monday's podcast, you made me feel crazy for saying that 9-6A had the advantage over 10-6A. You were giving 10-6A credit in the basketball world, but I was like, man, I don't think those schools will be able to hang. Or
I thought that Wiley would give Allen a better game than they did, and for a quarter and a half, this was Allen was trailing by 8. Midway through the second quarter, Wiley came out and just a lot of they play their engine is John Achibi, and that dude has one of the most relentless motors of any player I've seen this season, and his hustle and his aggression really kind of gets them rolling. And yeah, he was just all over the place to start, and they really had a tough time slowing him down, especially on the glass. And then midway through the second quarter, Allen's down 23-15, and they go on a 19-1 run to blow this thing open. Isaiah Stevens, Corey Jones, their two seniors, their two anchors, really helped jumpstart things. Stevens on offense, Jones on defense, and they just, they carried this thing well into the second half. And this was a 25-point game before you could blink. A player who really stood out in this game was Bryce Kennedy, their center, and he was tasked with the assignment of having to try to slow Achibi on the glass. And in the second half, Kennedy just went nuts, just with putbacks of his own, lots of strong finishes inside. Just some really impressive work from him, and really helped kind of subdue Achibi after a really hot start for Wiley. And you get Allen looking like one of the state's elite after its first true adversity, I would say, since the Jesuit game. So for a team that, with the exception of players like Stevens and Jones, a lot of those guys were playing the first meaningful playoff minutes of their careers. So I don't know, just to meet a little bit of adversity head on early out of the gates and respond the way they did. It was needed, because the road's only getting tougher from here for Allen. They get Colleen Shoemaker, state ranked, on Friday. If they are able to get by Shoemaker, could potentially draw Rockwall. This region is loaded with top tier talent. So yes, just for Allen's sake, though, they get that first one out of the way without a whole lot of resistance in the end. Sachse was tied with Jesuit at the half.
I was going to say, it's the same thing.
We kind of warned on Monday's podcast that this is what Jesuit will do. They'll play you very close in the first half, and then their third quarter, it's very Golden State Warriors-esque, where they just shift gears and there's no keeping up. And it sounds like that Sachse had all sorts of trouble with Julius Marble, vaunted big man for the Jesuit Rangers. He had 29 points. But yes, after a 27-27 first half, Jesuit outscored Sachse 22-4 in the third quarter, 22-8 in the fourth quarter, and that's how you get to a 71-39 victory.
That'll happen. Ask Allen. That'll happen.
Also, we had, let's see, we can quickly shift to Frisco ISD in your neck of the wood, Brian, so you can kind of chime in. So whether it was anything that happened in Frisco ISD or Little Elm or Salina, just kind of talk a bit about what were the big happenings in the first round of the playoffs in your neck of the woods.
Well, in Frisco, there weren't really too many surprises. They go 2-2 on the boys' side. Lone Star and Liberty, they finish atop the district. They win their games. Wakeland, they got blown out by McKinney North. Kind of predicted that when we talked about that on the podcast earlier this week. And then Frisco, we talked a little bit about them. We didn't know which Frisco we were going to get. The team that just beat Lone Star in the final district game of the year, or a team that lost to Memorial and lost to Reedy a couple of games before that. And, they lose by 1 to Lovejoy, and a low-scoring game, 34-33. I'm not saying I'm surprised by that, but so Liberty and Lone Star are the only two teams to advance. Lone Star, they'll actually play Woodrow Wilson Thursday night. They thought they were going to play South Oak Cliff, and Woodrow Wilson stunned South Oak Cliff last night in double overtime.
Okay.
And so everyone I was talking to, because Lone Star played their game Monday, everyone I was talking to, I was like, hey, who's it going to be? Obviously, South Oak Cliff is state ranked, and they're always good at basketball. And everyone was telling me, don't be surprised if it's South Oak Cliff. Well, they play Woodrow Wilson, a winnable game for Lone Star. They could be headed to the regional quarterfinal. Could be. Liberty, they take care of Princeton. That's no surprise over there. And then another no surprise, even though this game was much closer than I thought it would be, was Little Elm. Little Elm took on Grapevine over at Creekview. Man, it was too close for comfort. I was at the Salina game. I'll talk about Salina here in a second, but Little Elm has this app, and I discovered this last night that they were live streaming the games, with an actual broadcast. So I'm watching the Little Elm game, because Salina started at like 8:15, so I was able to watch a good chunk of the Little Elm game, and it's buffering a little bit. I'm like, come on, and I was able to watch a good amount of it. RJ hit a 3 at the buzzer going into the half. A runner with one leg from the volleyball line. Typical RJ Hampton stuff. Yeah. He dropped 30 in this one.
That's a layup for RJ Hampton.
Yeah, it is. It's a floater. Yeah. But they win this game 68-62, and the significance of that is they face Timberview on Friday, and Timberview ranked number 3 in the state. And I was wrong. I said something on the podcast on Monday. They lost in the second round 2 years ago to West Mesquite. They lost it in the third round last year to Mount Pleasant. I thought it was the second round, but really it was the third round. But still, these second and third rounds have been, tough outs for Little Elm.
Got to get RJ into the regional tournament somehow.
They have to, man. They have to. And a goal of this team right now, this year, Coach Segal told me, is to make it the fourth round. If they don't make a fourth round, it's not really a successful season. And
it'll require scoring what would, I think, be hands down the biggest win of their season if they're able to get it done.
Yeah, and that's...
You look over that resume of Timberview, and it is...
We were talking earlier about it off the air, and I was listing all the teams Timberview has beaten. It was Rockwall. It was just
Geyer, I think.
Geyer, Jesuit, Rockwall, literally every 6A, every 5... And Timberview is a 5A program, mind you, and they're so many state-ranked teams. I think I counted 9 or 10 state-ranked teams from 5 and 6A that they have beaten. The significant loss I saw in there was Duncanville.
Yeah, number 1 ranked in 6.
Everyone loses to Duncanville. So, yeah, tough task for them. And speaking of tough task, Salina, a game I was at last night. They go 10-0 in District 11 4A, and then they face the number 10 ranked team in the state in the first round. How does that happen?
The most deceptive 4 seed in the entire postseason.
Seriously, and Lincoln, man, they were having a slam dunk contest before the game. They were throwing up alley-oops off the wall. They were trying some NBA All-Star slam dunk contest stuff, and they would go nuts when they would throw one down. I'm just watching, man.
Jumping over each other, like Hamidou Diallo.
Shaq comes out, they jump over Shaq. I'm like, this Salina Lincoln, this should be a third or fourth round matchup, not in the first round. And Lincoln, man, they are good. They're in that Dallas ISD district with Carter and Wilmer Hutchins, Campbell Pinkston, all these state-ranked teams, and they played like it. Their guard play is quick. Coach Bobby Stastny told me that was the most athletic team they have played all year, and it showed. So they lost by 20. Still a great year for Salina. Everyone on that roster except for one senior and Noah Ross comes back next year, including Carson Stastny, who's one of the top scorers in the entire Metroplex. So Salina, they'll be back.
Other notable development, you had Lewisville ISD and Coppell combining to go 3-0 in the first round, despite some competitive draws on paper against District 5 6A. Some close games, though. Ultimately, you had Coppell, the top seed out of District 6 6A, needing some late heroics to pull it out against Keller Timber Creek, which needed a play-in game just to qualify for the postseason. The Cowboys were able to get this game in their home gym, and they squeak out a 53-51 victory. This one was, well, first off, if you go on Twitter and you check the Coppell boys basketball Twitter account, you'll see video of their player intros, because this was in their home gym, so you don't have to, you can maybe get a little more creative, and boy did they ever. They busted out a smoke machine and spotlights for their player intros, so very much in that playoff mood as Coppell embarked on their postseason run. And then but this was a game that Coppell trailed by 4 points inside the final minute, 51-47. They get a couple big threes from Adam Musa to really just to stave off the upset, and punch their ticket to the second round. You had Lewisville, a short-handed Lewisville team, did not have Keontae George, who remains day-to-day and whatnot, but yeah, they were able to, get by South Lake Carroll 66-57 last night. The third quarter was the big difference here in this one as far as helping them, separate after a very competitive first half. You had, in Keontae George's absence, you had the trio of O.C. Gertman, K.J. Pruitt, Kylan Green, all mainstays for that Farmers program, but they came through big. All three finished in double figures to pick up the slack and help because you got to think, with how reliant Lewisville had been on Keontae George, despite just being a freshman early on. So it can be kind of a culture shock when you start off the playoffs and you don't have your anchor there. But nevertheless, that veteran trio able to pick up the slack and get the Farmers into the second round. And then you had Hebron after a 2-year run of first round exits. Hebron is able to punch its ticket to the second round. They they took care of Byron Nelson in another competitive game, 54-49. It said it did not come easy. Nelson was leading this game inside the final 2:30 of the fourth quarter, and then Evan Anderson hits a big three to put the Hawks back in front, and they hold serve the rest of the way. So good for Hebron, because I know that had been a couple hard luck years for them after finishing first overall in their district, only to get bounced by the 4 seed from what was the Plano ISD, Allen McKinney ISD district back then at 6XA. So a nice little redemption for Hebron to get to the second round. Let's see, is that all we had? Let's see. Just to note some other local teams that we had advance. You had McKinney North advanced, Mesquite Poteet, the Colony, Lovejoy, and Newman Smith out in Carrollton. So plenty of teams still kicking as the second round of the boys basketball playoffs resumes Thursday and Friday. And that'll just about do it for this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Monday to just to talk more playoffs, be it second round boys reactions. We might have a couple teams going to the state tournament on the girls' side, so we will discuss that and more early next week, folks. Appreciate y'all for checking this out. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later.